My sister announced my bankruptcy at a family reunion, but she had no clue I had just bought her dream vacation home that Saturday morning. Revenge tasted like the expensive champagne she loved to flaunt on Instagram. The annual Pierce family gathering at Le Chateau, the most exclusive restaurant in our suburban town, always felt like navigating a minefield. But tonight, the explosions would be different. I just didn't know it yet. I'm Autumn. And yes, I was running late again. The valet line at Le Chateau was filled with luxury vehicles. Vivian's pearl white Tesla, commanding the prime spot near the entrance, of course. Through the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see my sister holding court, her designer dress catching the light as she gestured with a champagne flute. "Autumn, darling, you made it." My mother, Eleanor, rushed forward as I entered, her silk Hermes scarf swishing. Her smile was genuine, but tinged with that familiar worry. "Vivian's been asking where you were." I bet she has, I thought, smoothing down my simple blue Diane von Furstenberg dress, an investment piece I'd bought during last season's sale. "Traffic from the hospital was terrible, Mom." "Sorry I'm late." "When isn't she late?" Vivian's voice carried across the private dining room like a perfectly aimed arrow. My sister glided over, champagne in hand, looking every bit the successful luxury real estate agent in her Chanel suit. "But I guess that's what happens when you take the bus." She paused, pulling out her phone to capture another Instagram story moment. "I drove, actually," I said, forcing a smile. "The hospital parking is expensive, but the nurse's private lot has some perks." "Oh, right. Still doing that nursing thing?" Vivian's perfectly manicured hand waved dismissively. "Maxwell and I just closed on our third investment property this quarter. You should really think about your future, sis. I mean, running around in scrubs all day. Don't you want more?" Before I could respond, our father appeared. "Vivian, sweetheart, tell everyone about that new development deal." Harrison Pierce, ever the proud father, beamed at his eldest daughter. I watched as she commanded the room's attention, something she'd perfected since our private school days. My cousin Lucas caught my eye from across the room and gave me a sympathetic smile, adjusting his Apple Watch with a knowing look. "Everyone," Vivian clinked her crystal champagne flute, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the light. "I have the most amazing announcement." The room hushed. I grabbed a glass of Veuve Clicquot from a passing server, already knowing this wouldn't be good. "Maxwell and I are looking at the most exclusive property in the Hamptons," she gushed, already positioning her phone for another social media update. "It's absolutely perfect. Private beach access, 6 bedrooms, infinity pool." She paused dramatically, her red-soled Louboutins shifting on the marble floor. "Of course, not everyone can afford such investments." "Autumn, didn't you mention you were having money troubles?" At the restaurant, continued. The private dining room went silent. I froze, wine glass halfway to my lips, the expensive Veuve Clicquot suddenly tasting bitter. "I never said that," I managed, my grip tightening on the crystal stem. "Oh, come on," Vivian pressed, her smile sharp as a scalpel. "I saw those collection notices in your mailbox when I dropped by your quaint little apartment last month. No shame in admitting you're struggling. We can't all be successful." She ended her sentence with a quick tap on her phone, no doubt sharing another perfectly curated moment with her thousands of followers. Heat crept up my neck as relatives shifted uncomfortably in their designer outfits. Eleanor's face fell, her carefully applied makeup doing nothing to hide her disappointment, and Harrison looked anywhere but at me, suddenly very interested in the restaurant's contemporary art collection. "I'm doing fine, Vivian," I said quietly, years of trauma unit experience keeping my voice steady despite the anger building inside. "Fine, sweetie. You live in that tiny apartment in the up-and-coming neighborhood and take public transport. It's okay to admit you need help." That's what family is for. Her voice dripped with fake concern, her iPhone 15 Pro Max still recording. Maxwell, her husband, laughed nervously, adjusting his Rolex. Oh, maybe we should. No, really, she continued, warming to her audience. Autumn's always been the practical one. Some people just aren't meant for bigger things. Not everyone can handle the pressure of high-end real estate. It takes a certain sophistication. That's when something inside me snapped. Not in a dramatic, visible way, like the trauma cases I handled in the ER. Instead, it was like a quiet click. The sound of a perfectly placed four-line finding its mark, a treatment plan falling into place. I smiled, took a deliberate sip of champagne, and said nothing. Autumn? Eleanor ventured, concerned by my silence, her diamond tennis bracelet, a match to Vivian's, catching the light as she reached for me. Vivian's right, I said finally, my voice steady as a surgeon's hand. Some people aren't meant for bigger things. They're meant for smarter things. My sister's Instagram perfect smile faltered slightly. Excuse me, I said, pulling out my phone as it buzzed. Work emergency. On the restaurant terrace. As I stepped onto the terrace, the evening air carrying the scent of expensive cigars and nearby rose gardens, I saw Adrian's message. Everything's set. The papers are signed. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see my family inside the private dining room. Vivian holding court with her phone perpetually raised. Harrison and Eleanor beaming at their successful daughter. The relatives who'd watched this dynamic play out for years at every country club event and charity gala. My phone buzzed again, this time with a message from my real estate agent. Congratulations! The Hampton house is yours. Seller loved your all-cash offer. I smiled, thinking of Vivian's face when she'd announced her plans for that very same house. She had no idea I'd been quietly monitoring her Instagram posts about it for months, watching her stage impromptu photo shoots during viewings, reading her lengthy captions about manifesting her dreams. No idea I'd been building my wealth slowly and strategically while she flaunted her leased Tesla and financed Chanel bags. No idea that her perfect vacation home dream had just been purchased by her struggling little sister who supposedly couldn't afford valet parking. I typed back quickly, perfect. Keep the sale private for now. No social media announcements. The party continued inside, laughter and the clink of crystal floating through the windows. I stayed on the terrace a moment longer, savoring the calm before the storm I was about to create. Through the window, I could see Lucas checking his Apple Watch, giving me a subtle thumbs up. Sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold, it's served with perfect timing and an audience of Instagram followers. 3 days later, hospital cafeteria. You're actually insane, Adrian said, stirring his artisanal coffee as we sat in our usual corner of the hospital's renovated cafeteria. Like, actually, certifiably insane. And I love it. 3 days had passed since the family dinner at Le Chateau, and I was still riding the high of my secret purchase. 7 years of night shifts, trauma unit bonuses, and living well below my means had to pay off sometime. But the Hamptons house? That's next level petty. He leaned forward, grinning. Tell me everything. Hospital cafeteria, continued. I pulled out my iPhone, showing him the listing photos. 6 bedrooms with ocean views, private beach access, and the infinity pool Vivian wouldn't stop featuring in her Instagram stories. The same one she'd been posting about for months, with captions like, Future home sweet home blessed luxury real estate Hamilton life. I swiped through more photos on the Realtor's private portfolio app. Remember when I started picking up extra trauma shifts 4 years ago? When Vivian told everyone at the Mortons Christmas dinner that nursing was a backup career for people who couldn't handle medical school, I took a sip of my premium roast coffee. That's when I started seriously investing. Every extra shift, every holiday bonus, every trauma unit incentive went straight into my portfolio. While she was posting about her latest Birkin bag, I was meeting with financial advisors. And nobody knew. Why would they? Adrian smirked, adjusting his hospital ID badge. Vivian made sure everyone saw you as the struggling little sister who couldn't afford SoulCycle. It was the perfect cover. My phone buzzed, a text from Lucas. Viv's posting about the house again. You seeing this? I opened Instagram. There was Vivian, posed in front of the house during what must have been her third viewing, caption reading, "Dreams do come true. Can't wait to make this paradise ours. Blessed, luxury life. Hampton's house. Coming soon." Adrian nearly choked on his single origin coffee. She doesn't know? He wiped his mouth with a napkin. The selling agent is keeping it quiet at my request. She thinks she's getting it. Autumn. A sharp voice cut through our conversation. Dr. Martinez hurried over, her Fitbit showing elevated heart rate. Multiple car pile-up coming in. We need all hands in trauma. I grabbed my coffee, already feeling the familiar surge of adrenaline. Back to reality. Dinner tonight. Wouldn't miss it. This is better than your sister's reality show, worthy Instagram stories. Later that evening, Adrian's apartment. The next 12 hours were a blur of trauma patients, surgical assists, and electronic medical records. By the time I got to Adrian's trendy downtown apartment, I was exhausted but wired, still running on hospital coffee and adrenaline. Your timing is incredible, he said, handing me a glass of aged Cabernet as I collapsed onto his modern leather couch. Look what just came in my email. He handed me his iPad Pro. Inside was a letter from Coastal Elite Developments, offering to buy my new property for significantly more than I'd paid. They're building a luxury resort complex, Adrian explained, pulling up the developer's sleek presentation. They've been trying to buy up properties in that area. I stared at the number on the screen, nearly spilling my wine. It was enough to double my investment instantly. You're not considering it, are you? Adrian asked, reading my expression. No way. This isn't about money. I set the iPad down next to a stack of medical journals. You weren't there for my graduation, the nursing honors ceremony. I thought your family went. They did. Vivian showed up an hour late, spent the whole ceremony on her phone posting about her latest property listing, then dominated the entire celebration dinner talking about her new real estate license. When I mentioned I'd graduated top of my class and received the Excellence in Emergency Care Award, she said, "That's cute, but let's talk about real achievements." I just listed a penthouse in the Golden Triangle. Adrian winced, pouring himself another glass. Your parents? Dad asked Vivian for investment advice while I was giving my valedictorian speech. Mom just wanted everyone to get along, offering to buy us matching Cartier bracelets like that would fix everything. I took a long sip of wine. That's been my whole life. Vivian shines on social media. I fade into the background of her perfectly filtered photos. But not anymore. My phone lit up with a family group chat notification. Vivian had sent a message. Big news coming soon. Family dinner at our place this weekend to celebrate. Blessed. She thinks she's getting the house, Adrian said, reading over my shoulder. She thinks a lot of things. I showed him my investment portfolio app, where years of careful saving and smart investing had built a surprisingly robust 7-figure balance. Nobody ever asked how I could afford to live alone in the city on a nurse's salary. They just assumed I was struggling, because that's what Vivian told them to think. Adrian's apartment continued. Exactly. I forwarded the development company's offer to my secure email. You know what the best part is? I learned everything about real estate investment from listening to her brag about it at family gatherings and analyzing her Instagram stories. Every strategy, Every market trend, every exclusive tip she shared while trying to make me feel small. She taught me everything I needed to know to beat her at her own game. Adrian's iPhone chimed. He laughed, showing me the screen. Lucas wants to know if you're coming to Vivian's dinner. He says she's already got the caterer booked, but is transferring everything to her own serving dishes. Wouldn't miss it. I pulled up the property documents on my secure investment app. The closing papers should be finalized by Friday, just in time for her big announcement. Just in time, I agreed, imagining the look on Vivian's face when she realized her dream house announcement was about to turn into my victory lap. She'd probably even have her phone ready to capture the moment for her followers. Another text came through, this time from Eleanor. Autumn, sweetie, you haven't RSVP'd for Saturday. Please come. Vivian's planning something special. She even ordered those macarons you love from La Jury. Families should stick together. I smiled as I typed my response. Don't worry, Mom. I wouldn't miss this for the world. Saturday evening, Vivian's house. Saturday arrived with the weight of anticipation. I pulled up to Vivian's McMansion in my deliberately modest Honda, just as Lucas was getting out of his Tesla Model 3. Perfect timing, he said, falling into step beside me. You ready for whatever this is? More ready than she is, I muttered, clutching my Prada bag, last season's model, bought strategically at the outlet, with its hidden envelope inside. Vivian's house was a shrine to her curated success. All chrome and white surfaces, designer everything, and professional photos from her real estate victories lining the walls, carefully edited to show her best angles. Inside Vivian's house. Autumn. Maxwell greeted me with his usual awkward warmth, his Rolex catching the light from the crystal chandelier. Viv's in the kitchen. She's been cooking all day. She cooks now, Lucas whispered as we walked through the marble-floored hallway. She orders from that upscale catering service and transfers it to her Williams-Sonoma dishes, I whispered back. Always has. The kitchen was a flurry of activity. Vivian stood at her massive quartz island, arranging takeout containers' contents onto expensive serving platters, while Eleanor helped empty bags from Le Petit Gourmet, poorly hidden in the designer trash bin. The scent of homemade coq au vin filled the air. Autumn, you came. Vivian's smile was bright but didn't reach her eyes, which were already calculating the perfect angle for her Instagram stories. I was just telling Mom about the amazing news. She adjusted her Apple Watch, probably checking her latest post's engagement. Can't wait to hear it, I said, accepting a glass of premium wine from Maxwell. Oh, you're going to love it. It's absolutely life-changing. She straightened a platter of what I recognized as Le Petit Gourmet's signature appetizers. Unlike some people, I believe in growing and advancing. My mother shot me an apologetic look, her matching Cartier bracelet glinting. The doorbell rang again. Harrison arrived with Adrian, whom I'd invited as moral support. Vivian's perfectly shaped eyebrows raised slightly at his presence. Still hanging out with hospital people? She asked, her tone dripping with condescension as she snapped another photo for her stories. Still pretending you cook? I counted quietly, nodding toward the hidden takeout containers. Her eyes narrowed, but before she could respond, Maxwell called everyone to the formal dining room, where the table was set with the finest china money could finance. In the dining room. Before we eat, Vivian announced, standing at the head of the table in her Valentino dress, I have absolutely amazing news to share. She gripped Maxwell's hand, her collection of designer rings catching the light. As you know, we've been looking at the most gorgeous property in the Hamptons. I felt Adrian squeeze my knee under the Italian marble table. And after some very exclusive negotiations, she continued, already angling her iPhone for the perfect announcement shot, we are absolutely thrilled to announce. Actually, Maxwell interrupted, checking his phone with a frown, his complexion turning slightly pale. Honey, I just got an email from our agent. Not now, sweetie. As I was saying, Vivian's perfect smile remained frozen in place. Viv, Maxwell said softly, the house sold to someone else. The silence that followed was worth every penny I'd spent. The only sound was the gentle clink of Vivian's Cartier bracelet against her wine glass as her hand began to shake. What? Her voice was sharp enough to cut through her expensive stemware. That's impossible. Check again. It sold 2 days ago. The agent says the new owner wants to remain anonymous for now. Maxwell's voice was barely above a whisper. But we had an agreement. We were going to announce. I already posted hints on Instagram. Vivian's face flushed red, clashing with her carefully contoured makeup. We had multiple viewings. Viv, we never made an actual offer. They promised to hold it for us, because… Maxwell trailed off, looking increasingly uncomfortable in his designer suit. I took a slow sip of wine, watching my sister's perfect facade crack like her imported Italian marble countertops. Well, Harrison said, clearly trying to salvage the moment, there will be other properties, sweetheart. Dinner confrontation. No. Vivian slammed her manicured hand on the table, making the Wedgwood china rattle. That was our house. My house. I already told all my followers. My entire real estate network. She stopped, noticing my calm expression as I swirled the expensive wine in my glass. Why aren't you more upset about this? Why would I be upset? I asked, maintaining perfect composure, the same kind I use during major trauma cases. Because you're supposed to be happy for me. You're supposed to be jealous. Her voice cracked on the last word. Lucas choked on his wine, quickly covering it with his linen napkin. Viv, Maxwell said softly, maybe we should take a minute. No. This was supposed to be perfect. I was going to show everyone. She trailed off, her carefully constructed image crumbling like her contouring after a 12-hour day. Show everyone what? How successful I am. How much better. She caught herself, but not before our parents exchanged worried glances across their fine china plates. Better than who, Vivian? She didn't answer, but her glare said everything her Instagram captions couldn't. The Wagyu is getting cold, Eleanor interjected weakly, her hands fidgeting with her napkin. You know what's interesting? I said, reaching for my designer bag, last season's model, bought strategically at the outlet. Success isn't always about who posts the most on social media. What's that supposed to mean? Vivian's perfectly lined eyes narrowed. It means… I pulled out my phone, pulling up the property photos. The same ones she'd been posting with #dreamhouse tags for months. Sometimes the quiet ones surprise you. The revelation. Jordan. Adrian warned softly. But I was done being quiet. I was done being the Instagram prop in Vivian's perfectly curated life. Remember? Remember when you told everyone at Le Chateau that I was probably going bankrupt? I slid my phone across the imported marble table. Funny thing about that. Vivian grabbed the phone, her acrylic nails clicking against the screen as she scrolled through the familiar photos of her dream house. Her dream house, with my name on the deed. Her perfectly contoured face went from champagne flushed to pale. This is a joke, she whispered, her social media-ready smile completely gone. The closing papers arrived yesterday, I said, pulling the envelope from my bag. Would you like to see them? Maybe you could post them on your Instagram story. The dining room erupted in chaos. Maxwell was staring at me in disbelief. Harrison was demanding explanations, and Eleanor had her head in her hands, careful not to smudge her expensive makeup. But all I could see was Vivian's face, the exact moment she realized her struggling little sister had beaten her at her own game, and there wasn't a filter in the world that could fix it. How? She managed finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I stood up, smoothing down my dress. Maybe we should talk about real achievements, like graduating top of my class, or becoming the youngest senior trauma nurse in the hospital's history. You know, those cute little accomplishments you were too busy posting about your real estate license to notice. This isn't possible, Vivian kept saying, flipping through the closing papers with trembling hands, her bracelets jangling. You can't afford this. You're a nurse. The confrontation continues. A nurse who knows how to invest, I replied calmly. You taught me that, remember? All those family dinners where you talked about market trends and property values? While you were busy staging Instagram photos, I was taking notes. Maxwell leaned over Vivian's shoulder, examining the documents through his designer glasses. These are legitimate. She really bought it. All cash offer. But, Harrison started, then stopped, looking at me like he was seeing me for the first time in his expensive tailored suit. Autumn, how long have you been planning this? Planning? I laughed, the sound echoing off the high ceilings. I just saw an investment opportunity and took it. Isn't that what you always praised Vivian for doing? Between her constant posts about the property and her Instagram live tours, she practically gave me a virtual walkthrough. Vivian's face had gone from red to white, her makeup unable to hide her shock. You did this despite me. Did I? Or did you just assume nobody else could achieve what you wanted? Especially your struggling little sister, who takes the bus. Girls, Eleanor pleaded, her diamond earrings catching the light. Please, don't fight. We're not fighting, Mom, I said, taking another sip of the overpriced wine. We're having a business discussion. Isn't that right, Vivian? Lucas cleared his throat, adjusting his Apple Watch. Maybe we should eat before the catering. I mean, before Vivian's cooking gets cold. How? Vivian demanded, ignoring him. Where did you get the money? You live in that tiny apartment. You take public transport. The truth emerges. You really want to know? I pulled out my phone again, opening my investment portfolio app. Every time you mocked my career, I picked up an extra shift. Every time you bragged about your success on Instagram, I invested more. Do you know how much night shift differential adds up to over 7 years in the trauma unit? Or how much my apartment in that sketchy neighborhood is worth now that it's the city's hottest zip code? But your apartment. The bus. Vivian stammered, her perfect composure cracking. Is in a neighborhood that's tripled in value since I bought it. And I take the bus because hospital parking costs a fortune. And I prefer to invest my money rather than spend it on designer labels and luxury car leases. It's called being practical. Adrian spoke up, his medical badge still hanging from his collar. Autumn's one of the highest paid nurses in the trauma department. She's been published in medical journals. That's enough, Vivian snapped, her voice hitting the same pitch it did in her Instagram story rants. She turned to Maxwell. Call our lawyer. There has to be a way to contest this. Maxwell shifted uncomfortably in his Italian leather chair. Viv, we never made an offer. We have no legal grounds to. Then make some. This is our house. Her voice cracked on the last word, mascara starting to smudge. No, I said quietly, my trauma unit calm in full effect. It's my house. And I think you're having trouble with that because you never thought I could be competition. You were too busy staging photos for your followers to notice what was happening right in front of you. The emotional peak. The room fell silent again. Harrison was staring at his plate. Eleanor was close to tears, threatening to ruin her perfect makeup, and Lucas was trying very hard not to smile as he checked his Apple Watch. Competition? Vivian laughed, but it sounded as hollow as her social media presence. This isn't about competition. This is about you trying to steal my dream. Your dream? I stood up, placing both hands on the marble table. Let's talk about dreams, Vivian. Let's talk about my graduation ceremony, where you showed up late because you were busy doing an Instagram live about your latest listing. Or the time I got promoted to head trauma nurse, and you told everyone it was cute that I was playing doctor. Or how about last month at Le Chateau, when you tried to humiliate me in front of our entire family? That's different. I was trying to help. Her voice rose to match her rising panic. Help? Adrian interjected. By spreading rumors about her finances? Stay out of this, Vivian snapped. This is family business. He is family, I said firmly. He's been more supportive than you ever were while you were busy building your perfect social media life. Maxwell suddenly stood up, his chair scraping against the imported tile. Viv, we need to talk. Now. About what? I asked, my nurse's instinct for brewing crises kicking in. About the credit card statements I found, he said quietly. About the real reason we couldn't make an offer on the house. The color drained from Vivian's face, making her contour lines even more visible. Maxwell, not now. Yes, now. He turned to the rest of us. I'm sorry, everyone. We need a minute. The unraveling. They disappeared into the kitchen, but their heated whispers carried back to the dining room. The sound of Vivian's Louboutins clicking on the marble floor punctuated their argument. Should we? Eleanor gestured vaguely at the untouched food, her tennis bracelet catching the light. Actually, I said, gathering my things, I should go. I have contractors meeting me at my new house tomorrow morning to discuss renovations. One of the perks of making an all-cash offer. You can move quickly on improvements. Autumn, Harrison said suddenly, his voice rough. Wait. I paused, designer bag in hand. I'm sorry. We should have paid more attention. To your achievements. To the fact that you were building something real while Vivian was just creating a perfect image for social media. From the kitchen, Vivian's voice rose. I was going to pay it back. $60,000. In secret credit card debt. When were you planning to tell me? Maxwell shot back. Before or after you maxed out the new cards you applied for in my name? Eleanor's perfectly manicured hands flew to her mouth. Lucas whistled low. I think, Adrian said, standing up. That's our cue to leave. As we walked to our cars, the sounds of Vivian and Maxwell's argument followed us into the night air. Lucas caught up with us in the driveway. That, he said, checking his Apple Watch one last time, was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Better than any reality show. It's not over, I replied, looking back at the house. This was just the beginning. What do you mean? I smiled, pulling out my keys. The contractors aren't just doing renovations tomorrow. They're doing an assessment for that resort development company. Adrian's eyes widened. You're not. Like I said, I learned from the best. Sometimes the biggest deals happen in stages. And unlike some people, I know how to keep things off social media until they're finalized. The next morning, at the beach house. The next morning, I stood on the private beach of my new property, watching the waves roll in as contractors walked the perimeter. In the clear morning light, everything Vivian had posted about was even more beautiful in person. The Coastal Elite Developments representative, Sarah Chen, stood beside me with her tablet in hand. The location is perfect, she said, her business attire a stark contrast to the casual beach setting. Your property is the key piece we need to complete the luxury resort complex. And the offer? She showed me the number on her tablet. It was triple what I'd paid. That's just the starting point, she added. We're also offering a lifetime membership to the resort once it's built, plus. My phone buzzed. Vivian's name flashed on the screen for the 5th time that morning, her perfectly filtered profile picture staring up at me. I declined the call. Everything okay? Sarah asked, professional but curious. Family drama. Nothing unusual. I gestured toward the house, its infinity pool gleaming in the morning sun. Tell me more about your plans for the property. As she launched into details about the resort complex, another call came through, this time from Lucas. You need to check Instagram, he said when I answered. Vivian's having a meltdown. I pulled up the app. Vivian had posted a series of stories, each more unhinged than the last. The latest showed her crying in her Tesla. Family betrayal is the worst kind. Can't believe my own sister would do this to me. #toxic family. #betrayed. #pray for me. Miss Pierce. Sarah was waiting expectantly. Sorry, what were you saying about the beachfront access? Before she could answer, a familiar Tesla came roaring up the private drive, leaving tire marks on the perfectly paved entrance. Oh no, I muttered, as Vivian emerged. Designer sunglasses, hiding what I assumed were puffy eyes, her usual perfect appearance notably disheveled. The confrontation at the beach house. We need to talk, Vivian shouted, marching across the sand in her impractical Louboutins, her Hermes scarf whipping in the ocean breeze. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Should I give you a moment? No need. I turned to face my sister. Vivian, I'm in a business meeting. Business meeting? She laughed hysterically, pulling out her phone as if on instinct. This is literally destroying our family. Have you seen what people are saying on social media? The contractors paused their work, watching the scene unfold. Several had their phones out, no doubt recognizing the famous luxury real estate agent from her countless Instagram posts. The only thing being destroyed is your illusion of superiority, I said calmly, channeling my trauma unit composure. Now, if you'll excuse us. Maxwell's leaving me. That stopped me cold. What? He found out about everything. The credit cards, the shopping, the lies about our investments. She pulled off her Gucci sunglasses, revealing mascara-streaked cheeks. He's staying at his brother's house. Are you happy now? Is this enough revenge for you? Sarah cleared her throat. I can come back another time. No, I said firmly. Vivian's leaving. You can't just. Actually, I can. This is private property. My private property. And you're trespassing. Your property? She gestured wildly at the house, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the morning light. This was supposed to be mine. My dream house. My perfect life. Do you know how many followers were waiting for my announcement post? The confrontation continues. Perfect life. I stepped closer, the ocean breeze carrying the scent of her expensive perfume. You mean the one you built on credit cards and lies? The one where you had to put everyone else down to feel superior? Remember my first apartment? You told everyone on Instagram I lived in a dangerous neighborhood because I couldn't afford better. That neighborhood is now the hottest real estate market in the city. Or when I got my first promotion. You said nursing was a dead-end job while you posed with sold signs. Well, guess what? While you were maxing out credit cards to keep up appearances, I was investing my dead-end salary. Sarah's tablet pinged. She glanced at it, then at me. Miss Pierce, the board just approved a higher offer. Vivian's eyes darted to the tablet. What offer? None of your business, I said. But Vivian had already snatched the tablet, her perfectly manicured nails scratching the screen. Her face went pale as she read. A resort complex. You're selling to developers? Maybe. Or maybe I'll keep it and rent it out. Or maybe I'll just let it sit empty. The point is, it's my decision. You can't. I can. And you know what the best part is? I took the tablet back. I learned everything about real estate from you. Every boast, every brag about your investments, every Instagram live tour. I was listening. taking notes, learning. Tears streamed down her face, ruining her expensive makeup. I'm your sister. Yes, you are. And for years, I watched you succeed while you made sure everyone saw me fail. Now you get to watch me succeed. Maybe you can post about that on your feed. Hospital break room continued. Are you going to call him back? Before I could answer, my phone lit up with a text from Maxwell. Can we meet? There's something you need to know about Vivian's finances. That's new, Adrian said, reading over my shoulder. You going to do it? I typed back. Coffee shop across from the hospital. 30 minutes. At the coffee shop, Maxwell was already there when I arrived, looking exhausted in his usually impeccable suit. The Rolex was gone from his wrist. Thanks for coming, he said as I sat down. I know things are messy right now. That's one word for it. He pulled out a folder. You need to see these before you make any decisions about the property. Inside were credit card statements, loan documents, and bank records, all with Vivian's name. She's underwater, Maxwell said quietly. The designer clothes, the Tesla, the image she created. It's all debt. She was counting on that house to fix everything. How? She was going to use it as collateral for a loan to pay off the credit cards. When that fell through, he ran a hand through his hair. I found out she'd been forging my signature on loan applications. My coffee went cold as I flipped through the documents. The numbers were staggering. Why are you showing me this? Because she's not just destroying herself, she's dragging your parents into it. They're talking about taking out a second mortgage to help her. At the coffee shop, continued. My phone buzzed, a text from Lucas. Emergency family meeting at your parents' house tonight. Vivian's idea. She's even turned off her Instagram notifications. You coming? I showed Maxwell the message. She doesn't know I'm meeting you, he said, straightening his tie. No longer Hermes. But Autumn, be careful. She's desperate. Evening, parents' house. That evening, I pulled up to my parents' house to find it full again. But this time, the atmosphere was heavy. Vivian sat on the couch, looking smaller without her usual designer outfit and perfect makeup. Her phone was nowhere in sight. Autumn. Eleanor rushed forward. Thank goodness you came. What's this about? It's about family, Harrison said, his usual confidence subdued. About making things right. Vivian stood up, hands clasped in front of her. She was wearing a simple sweater instead of her usual luxury brands. I've been doing a lot of thinking. About mistakes. And consequences. Vivian, please, let me finish. She took a shaky breath. I've hurt people. Made bad choices. But I want to make it right. Starting with you, Autumn. Lucas, sitting in the corner, caught my eye and shook his head slightly. I've been terrible to you, Vivian continued. Competitive. Cruel. Dismissive. And now I'm paying for it. But it's not just me suffering. Mom and Dad are taking out a second mortgage to cover your debts. My debts? I interrupted. The room went silent. Family confrontation. How did you? Harrison started. Maxwell told me everything. I turned to my parents. Did she tell you about the forged loan applications? The maxed out credit cards? The fact that her entire social media lifestyle was built on debt? Autumn, please, Eleanor pleaded, twisting her wedding ring. She's trying to make amends. No, she's trying to manipulate you into bailing her out again. Vivian's facade cracked completely. You don't understand. I need help. What you need is consequences. We're putting up the house as collateral, Harrison said. Just until she gets back on her feet. Dad, no. You can't risk everything you've worked for. She's our daughter. So am I. The words echoed in the sudden silence. But you never mortgaged your house when I was starting out. You never rushed to rescue me when things were hard. That's different, Eleanor said weakly. Why? Because I didn't cry and manipulate. Because I solved my own problems instead of posting them on Instagram. Vivian stepped forward, desperation in her eyes. If you sell the beach house to those developers, I could. There it is, I laughed. The real reason for this family meeting. You want my house. It could save all of us. Pay off my debts. Save Mom and Dad's house. Your debts, not ours. Not mine. I grabbed my bag. And that house. It's not for sale. Not to the developers. And certainly not to fix your mistakes. The turning point. Autumn, wait, Harrison called as I headed for the door. The family photos on the wall seemed to watch me go. Years of carefully curated memories. I turned back one last time. You know what the difference is between Vivian and me? I learned from my mistakes. She just expects everyone else to fix them. The door closed behind me, cutting off their protests. In my car, I pulled out my phone and called Sarah. About that resort offer, I said. I've made my decision. 2 weeks later, the beach house. 2 weeks later, I stood in the newly renovated living room of the beach house, watching the sunset through floor-to-ceiling windows. The sound of cars pulling up the driveway broke the peaceful moment. They're here, Adrian said, adjusting the appetizer trays we'd set out. Ready? Lucas asked, handing me a glass of champagne. I nodded. Time to end this. The doorbell rang. I'd invited the entire family, parents, Vivian, Maxwell, cousins, everyone, for what they thought was a housewarming party. They didn't know about the papers sitting on my desk, waiting to be signed. Eleanor entered first, clutching her purse like a shield. Oh, Autumn. It's beautiful. The renovations turned out perfectly, I said, watching Vivian's face as she took in the space that could have been hers. Maxwell hung back, avoiding his wife's gaze. They still weren't living together, according to Lucas's updates. Well, Harrison said, clearing his throat. This is quite something. It is, isn't it? I gestured for everyone to sit. But before we celebrate, there's something we need to discuss. The announcement. You're selling to the developers? Vivian asked, her voice small, missing its usual Instagram-ready confidence. Not exactly. I picked up the folder from my desk. I've created a family trust. A what? Eleanor asked, her hands still fidgeting with her purse. A family trust. The house will be its main asset. I started distributing copies of the paperwork. I'm transferring ownership to the trust with specific conditions. Maxwell leaned forward, reading quickly. This is unexpected. The house will serve as a family vacation property, available to all of us on a rotating schedule. I watched their faces as they read. But there are rules. Rules? Vivian's voice was barely audible. First, the house can never be used as collateral for loans or sold without unanimous consent from all trust members. Second, usage rights are dependent on financial responsibility. Meaning what? Harrison asked. Meaning anyone who wants to use the house must provide proof of financial stability. No outstanding debts, no legal issues, no hidden credit cards. Vivian's hands trembled as she held the papers. Additionally, I continued, I've arranged for financial counseling services, fully paid for by the trust, available to any family member who needs it. Autumn. Eleanor started, tears in her eyes. I'm not finished. The trust also includes a scholarship fund for future generations of our family, specifically for medical and nursing education. The resolution. The room was silent as my words sank in. Why? Vivian finally asked, her voice stripped of its usual performative polish. Because despite everything, we're family. And families should lift each other up, not tear each other down. I met her eyes. But they also shouldn't enable destructive behavior. The counseling services. Maxwell said slowly. That's your condition for Vivian, isn't it? I nodded. Complete the program, get your finances in order, and you'll have equal access to the house. The same rules apply to everyone. And Mom and Dad's mortgage? Vivian asked. Will remain their responsibility. But the trust includes provisions for emergency family assistance, with strict oversight and repayment terms. Harrison stood up abruptly. I need some air. Dad, wait. Let me speak. He turned to face me. All these years, I thought. He shook his head. I was wrong about you, Autumn. So wrong. We both were, Eleanor added, wiping her eyes. Vivian hadn't moved, still staring at the papers. I don't deserve this. No, you don't, I agreed. But that's not the point. The point is giving all of us, a chance to do better. The financial counseling, she said quietly. When can I start? First session is scheduled for Monday, if you want it. She nodded, unable to speak. Final resolution. There's one more thing, I said, pulling out a final document. Maxwell, this is for you. He took the paper, eyes widening. This is evidence of the forged loan applications. What you do with it is up to you. The room held its breath as Maxwell stared at the document, then at Vivian. Finally, he tore it in half. Everyone deserves a second chance, he said. But only one. Vivian burst into tears. Now, I said, raising my glass. Who's ready for that housewarming party? As the tension broke and people began to mingle, Lucas pulled me aside. You planned this all along, didn't you? The trust, the counseling, everything. I smiled, watching my family move through the space. Eleanor examining the kitchen, Harrison out on the deck, Vivian and Maxwell talking quietly in a corner. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all, I said. Sometimes it's being the person they never thought you could be. And sometimes, Adrian added, joining us, it's showing them who you've been all along. Through the windows, the sun had set completely, leaving the beach in darkness. But inside, the house glowed with new beginnings and second chances. Not for Instagram, not for show, but for something real, something that couldn't be captured in a perfectly filtered post.